When I think back to the many video games that I've played through, spanning multiple genres like survival horror or a 2D platformer, I like to remember the best moments in these games. The moments where the game either clicked for me or made me love it even more. Some of these moments are calmer moments like the giraffe scene in The Last of Us or climbing Celeste mountain in Celeste. These moments were just beautiful, but why is that? What made these moments so memorable? That's what I want to try and discuss in this video, going over some of my favorite moments in gaming, the different types of moments that stand out to us, and why they work so well like they do. If you don't want to be spoiled, I will be listing which games will be talked about in each section on screen right now. I will be keeping the spoilers as light as possible, but sometimes these moments just need to be discussed with full-on spoilers. With that out of the way, I think the best place to start with are the sections of video games that give you that adrenaline rush and get you hyped. Many games have these moments that just make you feel cool, like a real boss, or are so exciting that you might be at a complete disadvantage compared to what you're up against, but nonetheless make you feel the rush. I would label this type of moment as an action sequence, but I think there needs to be a difference between certain action sequences, as I think there are two types that can be distinguished: automation and involvement, and then, the third type that combines both of these two. Automated set pieces, although might look super cool, doesn't really require much input from the player and becomes static. There are many sequences that do this, and for good set pieces like this to stand out, they've got to make sure what you're seeing on screen is captivating enough to forget you are in autopilot mode. This is one reason why I think the new Donk City Festival in Super Mario Odyssey is such a memorable moment. The platforming is very bare bones, and if it were just a normal level, it wouldn't be as fun to play through, but the music, light show, and the vibe the scene gives off is beyond amazing. It pays tribute to Mario's legacy, his past, and his roots, all whilst being like a halfway point of the main story. It's a great reward for players to watch and for longtime fans to experience and see how far the plumber has come.
So let's do the Odyssey.
There are also straight up automated sequences in gaming with no single action required from the player in the form of cutscenes. Cutscenes in games need to have two elements to be great: show the story and character's personality with their actions on screen, and the most important one, being able to keep the player's attention throughout. There are tons of great cutscenes in games, especially from Sony's first-party titles, but for me, Sonic Unleashed's opening is the greatest we have ever seen Sonic. First off, the cutscene holds up extremely well to this day. This opening looks better than tons of animated movies and scenes from this year, and man does it show Sonic's personality in a perfect way. From the way he taunts Eggman to taking out the Eggbots in a show-off kind of way, there's so much action going on, explosions and punches, bursts of light, and the story here is such a good opening, laying the groundwork and stakes for the remainder of the game. Peak Sonic, in my opinion. And on the other side of the spectrum, the sequences that combine automation and player's interactivity, and these create these real adrenaline pumping moments and feelings. Final Fantasy VII Remake's motorcycle chase sequence is one such example. Although the original sequence is also great, I want to talk about the original later on. This set piece has it all. From the escape from the tower, Cloud throwing his sword and taking out the goons one by one as you protect the car of your friends. On top of that, a really epic boss fight against this big ball. But it's the rush and feeling from escaping the Shinra Corporation on a highway, knowing that there is no point of return after this point because now you're going all in on saving the planet. Cyberpunk 2077 has a similar event, but rather escaping a tower, you are raiding it as Johnny Silverhand, played by Keanu Reeves. Although the gameplay intensity isn't as tense as Final Fantasy VII Remake's chase, what makes this section so good is the presentation. For one, the insanely good soundtrack makes this moment hit so hard. Silverhand's reload animation as well shows this cocky guy, and the gun you have is one of the strongest weapons you get to play with, so in you go, one-shotting enemies and trying to take on Arasaka, and this moment truly legendary. Games don't always need to have these hyper-intense moments to keep you invested, as you can also opt for the more emotional moments to hit the players in the feels. And although it's tough to say what makes emotional and narrative moments hit as hard as they do, is a bit uncertain. Obviously, if the story is really well written, that is enough to keep the players engaged, but if it's just a cutscene after cutscene after cutscene, it just becomes a movie, which isn't a game. Games need you to be interactive with them, and that's why games try to make the story and cutscene feel like a reward. After long stretches of gameplay, you manage to take down a super hard challenge, you want to rest a bit, not necessarily stop playing the game, but you want to keep playing the game and experience it without giving it your all. Just as recently as Baldur's Gate 3, I took down the whole Goblin camp and was rewarded with a relaxing festivity at camp, where I even got to spend some time with Shadowheart. That's how some amazing moments are created, by creating a contrast and reward after tough stretches of a game. God of War 2018 and Hades both share similar structures in how their narratives are presented, although they are two different genres of game. After sections of gameplay, you are presented with a narrative exposition. Not that the game dumps a bunch of story at you, but rather, your questions from earlier in the game are answered and more questions are added on. Adding to this, the games are both exceptionally well written, making the worlds feel lived in long before and after your time in the game, and the characters all have their charms to them, giving them both strong mystery and intrigue, and my favorite moments come from both of the endings of the games. They cap off strong journeys through hardship, not just through the difficulty of the game, but the hardships that the characters have gone through as well. Where I think both of these games hit the peak at the end of the game, they're also games that just throw all the emotion right at the start of the game. Although for some players this can be quite jarring by simply starting at an all-time high, with the right charm and writing, it can work, which is why I think one of the best introductions in all of gaming is the introduction to Mother 3. Sure, as a tutorial, it does a pretty good job at showing you the mechanics, but where it succeeds is in the story. Now, I don't want to talk too much about this introduction because really, it's a trip. Not a pleasant one, but a phenomenally well made one. From the goofiness, the wholesomeness, and the heartbreak. That's the best way I can describe it, as the world's fastest roller coaster that reaches the top and suddenly drops straight down and lands. It's a masterpiece. Other times in narratives, the high point in the story isn't the beginning or the ending, but rather a moment that comes out of the blue, a plot twist, so to speak of, and that's the next section. We all love a good plot twist, but when they work, how do they work so well? I think they need two factors, the element of surprise and the element of reality. Surprise is easy enough to understand, but for reality, that's what we need to make sense of. A twist needs to be kept within the bounds of the possibility that it could happen within the story. You can't just suddenly reveal that you are, I don't know, some superhero with cosmic powers at the end of the game. No, because you need to have given hints to the player, both subtle and obvious, that it could happen. This is why the ending revelation of Dead Space is a masterclass as it is. In Dead Space, you are on board the Ishimura to help fix it after it went out and to find your wife. You learn that the religion there has used something called the marker to alter people's perception of reality and such. So you cross the ship, kill necromorphs, help around, defeat bosses, and you find your wife eventually, on multiple occasions, who helps you fix the Ishimura to get back on track. Up until the ending, when you find out that Nicole, your wife, was in fact another character altogether, and it was just a marker affecting you to perceive her as your wife. There are tons of subtle hints towards this throughout the game, making you on edge but relieved at the same time whenever you are around her, making this revelation a great one. Perception is also a thing that is taught with boss battles, for instance. Some bosses play with the concept of death in boss fights. Two standouts for me is the introduction fight with Thor in God of War Ragnarok and King K. Rool in the original Donkey Kong Country. With Thor, you just die naturally to one of his attacks, you get the game over screen, until you hear Thor speak and says he decides when you die and he brings you back to life. Like, I can't describe it, man, such a cool moment. We also have the final boss of Donkey Kong Country, where upon defeating him, the credits start rolling, but there are some differences here from your usual credit roll. All the first letters of the credits were replaced with the letter K. I then connected the dots of King K. Rool with all Ks, and then the big croc comes back for phase 2. Relatively easy fight, but for how memorable it was, it's legendary in its twist, and being probably one of the first times a phase 2 was used. But there are other ways to surprise the players and catch them off guard. You don't just have to do it through the narrative or gameplay, as you can also do it through a sense of wonder, amazement that there is even more to this game than you might have believed. This is why I think so many players will agree with me here that the best moment in Elden Ring was taking the elevator to the underground for the first time, not knowing where it takes you. It looks like any other elevator in the game, only difference is that it's in the middle of the forest, and once you realize it's taking a lot longer than usual, you see stars in the distance. You get this feeling of wonder at what it is you're currently witnessing, a massive underground world under an already massive overworld. So I took Torrent and galloped out of this temple and got hit with this view. I don't think there are many moments that come close to this during regular gameplay. Truly spectacular. And for my final section, we have the boss fights. I was going to talk some more about Armored Core 6 again, but I've already done that at length, and you can check that video out after you finish watching this one. But good boss fights, how are they made? The best fights are those that either put all your gameplay skills that you've learned to the test, or have driving emotions behind them, or of course combining both. This is why I want to highlight the final boss of Super Metroid and Tears of the Kingdom, and the final part of the final boss of Final Fantasy VII, and an early boss in Nier Automata, where the latter two will get its own little segment apart from the first two that I mentioned. Super Metroid's fight against Mother Brain and Tears of the Kingdom's battle against Ganondorf both share two common elements. Firstly, they truly put all their gameplay skills to the test because those fights are pretty challenging. From jumping at the right time to parrying the right moves, they are challenging and satisfy the need for difficulty at the climax that the players want. Also, Ganon has this super cool moment when his health bar goes beyond the usual health bar size. Crazy, but moving on. They both share a crucial second element. The victory lap, so to speak. This is after the main chunk of combat is where you're treated to a special moment. In Super Metroid, the baby Metroid you save in the original Metroid 2 comes to save you and fuses with you to give you a hypercharged damage and movement, and in Tears of the Kingdom, we have the Zelda dragon giving you support and just a cool ending sequence of flying in the air and shooting down Ganondorf's dragon form. So as you can see, both fights combine the need for difficulty and a heavy emotional weight behind them in the second phase by feeling cool and rewarded for having made it this far. The other two fights connected with me more on their presentation rather than through their gameplay. Cloud vs Sephiroth is that duel that we've been waiting for since the beginning of the game, and finally facing him deep in the crater, full anime style cutscene, is super iconic. The remake's version is cool, but the original nailed it all the way back then because of how well it built up the character of Sephiroth and now knowing the stakes and full story behind Cloud. Although I don't think you can die in this section, it's a standout moment nonetheless for its presentation. The same can be said about the first fight against Adam in Nier Automata, mainly the music. Dear me, the music in this game is fantastic. The way the instrumental of Birth of a Wish builds into the chance of the robots not wanting to die, saying this cannot continue, is just crazy good. You're killing sentient beings that don't want any of this to continue, and that adds to an extraordinary sense of guilt and power during that fight. That's just some of the highlights of the best moments that I've experienced in gaming, and I'm not quite sure how to end this, so I'm skipping the conclusion. Welcome to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, a like and a comment with your own best moments in gaming means a lot, and a dislike too if you didn't enjoy the video, as that helps me gauge what videos work or not. Other than that, I want to thank you guys for the support on the recent videos this whole month. I probably won't be uploading 2 videos a week for a long time to come, as now I don't have much time to do that, but weekly videos is still something I'm willing to do, so I'll keep trying to do that and making the best videos that I can. But anyways, I'm going to play some Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, and I hope to see you in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, night, and week, and with that, Storm out.